Hi guys, we have 100 questions today on songs from the 50s all the way to the 70s. Let's take a look at our quiz class awards. You can tell us how you ranked in the comments after the quiz. And our categories are rock and roll, doo-wop and traditional pop, country, blues, disco, and soul and R&B. So let's begin with our first category, rock and roll. Question 1. Which song helped to solidify Elvis Presley's status as a rock and roll icon? Jailhouse Rock, The Devil's Blues, or Rock Around the Clock? Jailhouse Rock. Which song by Little Richard introduced many listeners to the power and excitement of rock and roll? Johnny B. Good, Tutti Frutti, or Rock Around the Clock? Tutti Frutti. Which song showcased Jerry Lee Lewis's piano skills and dynamic stage presence? The Fat Man, Double Crossing Blues, or Whole Lotta Shakin' Going On? The Fat Man. Which song by Eddie Cochran tells the story of a young man trying to balance work, school, and his desire to have fun? Summertime Blues, Summertime Fun, or Summertime Rock? Summertime Blues. Which song gained a new life when Elvis Presley performed it on national television? Kiss Me, Johnny B. Good, or Hound Dog? Hound Dog. Which song by Little Richard epitomized the wild, unpredictable energy of early rock and roll? Long Gone Lonesome Blues, Long Tall Sally, or A Long Way to Go? Long Tall Sally. Which song marked Buddy Holly's breakthrough onto the national scene? That'll Be the Day, Rocket 88, or Glory of Love? That'll Be the Day. Who sang the 1955 hit Maybelline? Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, or Little Richard? Chuck Berry. Who released the original Blue Suede Shoes in 1956? Carl Perkins, Elvis Presley, or Jesse Stone? Carl Perkins. Who sang the 1959 hit What I Say? Bill Monroe, Leon Payne, or Ray Charles? Ray Charles. Who originally sang Shake, Rattle, and Roll in 1954 with lyrics referring explicitly to romantic desires? Big Joe Turner, Bill Haley and his Comets, or Jesse Stone? Big Joe Turner. Another song covered by Bill Haley and his Comets is See You Later Alligator, originally performed by who? Bobby Charles, Buddy Holly, or Bill Haley? Bobby Charles. Heartbreak Hotel, released in 1956, was one of the earliest hits. By who? Bill Monroe, Elvis Presley, or Paul Anka? Paul Anka. Roll Over Beethoven, a song celebrating youth culture and rock and roll while paying homage to musical legends, was a song by who? Chuck Berry, Frank Sinatra, or the Penguins? Chuck Berry. La Bamba is based on a traditional Mexican folk tune. Who is the artist behind the song, released in 1958? Little Richard, Richie Valens, or Ricky Nelson? Richie Valens. And let's move over to doo-wop and traditional pop. Who released the classic doo-wop song with its rich harmony and memorable bass line in the Still of the Night in 1956? The Five Satins, the Isley Brothers, or the Monotones? The Five Satins. Who released Earth Angel in 1955? The Big Bopper, the Coasters, or the Penguins? The Penguins. Who released the 1955 hit Only You and You Alone? Buddy Holly, Four Aces, or the Platters? The Platters. No multiple choice here. Which musical group released Unchained Melody in 1965? The Righteous Brothers. Question 20. A novelty track with humorous lyrics, Get a Job, was released in 1958 by who? The Big Bopper, the Ravens, or the Silhouettes? The Silhouettes. Who released Little Darling in 1960 and was initially mistaken for the Beatles due to similar names? The Bee Gees, the Diamonds, or the Gladiolas? The Gladiolas. Though not strictly adhering to the doo-wop formula, who released Up on the Roof in 1962? The Drifters, Ray Price, or Jerry Lee Lewis? The Drifters. Who released Come Go With Me in 1957? The Beatles, the Dell Vikings, or the Monkees? The Dell Vikings. Who released the doo-wop smash hit Save the Last Dance for Me in 1960? James Brown, the Drifters, or Willie Nelson? The Drifters. With a strong lead vocal supported by lush backing harmonies, Teenager in Love was released in 1959 by who? Tiny Hilton's Orchestra, George Shearing, or Dion and the Belmonts? Dion and the Belmonts. Combining intimate vocals with bold brass sections, who released the 1966 hit Strangers in the Night? Frank Sinatra, Fred Astaire, or Harry Connick Jr.? Frank Sinatra. Who released Mona Lisa in 1950, a song with velvety vocals and poignant lyrics? John Pizzarelli, Nat King Cole, or Judy Garland? Nat King Cole. Infusing new life into a Kurt composition, who transformed Mac the Knife with his version in 1959? Bobby Darin, Frank Sinatra, or John Pizzarelli? Bobby Darin. Embracing elements of jazz, blues, and Celtic folk traditions, who creates an ethereal atmosphere perfect for a late-night contemplation with the 1970 hit Moon Dance? Billy Ray Cyrus, Marvin Gaye, or Van Morrison? Van Morrison. Question 30. Who thoroughly committed himself in his heartfelt 1960 dedication to his home state, Georgia on My Mind? Dion and the Belmonts, Ray Charles, or the Rays? Ray Charles. And let's move over to country music. Who released the catchy country tune Chattanooga Shoeshine Boy in 1950? Johnny Cash, Little Richard, or Red Foley? Red Foley. Who recorded the renowned country waltz, the Tennessee Waltz, which expresses bittersweet recollections of love? Patti Page, Nina Simone, or Etta James? Patti Page. Which heartbroken singer promised to sail solo after being left behind in his smash hit I'll Sail My Ship Alone? Dion DiMucci, Moon Mullican, or Sonny Boy Williamson II? Moon Mullican. Who released the classic song Why Don't You Love Me in 1950? Elvis Presley, Hank Williams, or Patsy Cline? Hank Williams. Who is the artist behind I'm Moving On, a song about leaving behind troubled relationships? Hank Snow, Leon Payne, or Paul Anka? Hank Snow. Who released Rag Mop, a song that invites everyone to the dance floor? Bill Monroe, Johnny Lee Wills, or Paul Anka? Johnny Lee Wills. Who released the lighthearted song If You've Got the Money, I've Got the Time, emphasizing financial compatibility? Dion DiMucci, Lefty Fritzell, or Ricky Nelson? Lefty Fritzell. What is the title of Ernest Tubb and Red Foley's 1952 song about relationship struggles while traveling together? Are We There Yet? The Long Way Down, or Wish We Were Halfway There? Wish We Were Halfway There. Who released There Stands the Glass in 1953? Buck Owens, Johnny Cash, or Webb Pierce? Webb Pierce. Question 40. Who is the artist behind the haunting Folsom Prison Blues, released in 1955? Buck Owens, Johnny Cash, or Ricky Martin? Johnny Cash. Who released the story-driven Western ballad El Paso in 1959? Cliff Richard, Marty Robbins, or Ricky Martin? Marty Robbins. Who was the artist behind the humorous act Naturally, released in 1963. Buck Owens, Ray Charles, or Simon and Garfunkel? Buck Owens. Who released the anthemic protest song, praising small-town values, Okie from Muskogee, released in 1969? Silver Apples, Roy Orbison, or Merle Haggard? Merle Haggard. Who released the song Kiss an Angel Good Morning in 1971 as a reminder to treat your loved ones well every day? Charlie Pride, Gal Costa, or the Stone Ponies? Charlie Pride. Who released the 1976 hit Daydreams About Night Things? Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, or Ronnie Milsap? Ronnie Milsap. And let's move over to blues. Who released Smokestack Lightning in 1956, an electrifying Delta blues song that defined Chicago electric blues? Benny King, Howlin' Wolf, or the Hollies? Howlin' Wolf. Who performed the confident blues song Mannish Boy in 1955? Bobby Gentry, Muddy Waters, or the Beatles? Muddy Waters. Who is the artist behind the 1970 Memphis-style slow blues hit, The Thrill Is Gone? B.B. King, The Four Aces, or Teresa Brewer? B.B. King. Who was the infamous artist behind the 1936 hit, re-released in 1961, Crossroad Blues? Carl Perkins, Johnny Cash, or Robert Johnson? Robert Johnson. Question 50. Who released the 1954 Delta blues song, I Can't Quit You Baby? Little Richard, Little Willie John, or Willie Dixon? Willie Dixon. Who released the 1967 smash hit Born Under a Bad Sign? Albert King, Glenn Miller, or the Ink Spots? Albert King. Who released the 1955 chart topper My Babe? Little Walter, Little Willie John, or Little Richard? Little Walter. Who released the innovative West Side Soul in 1967? Artie Shaw, Magic Sam, or Peggy Lee? Magic Sam. Who released Hoodoo Man Blues in 1965? Elvis Presley, Junior Wells, or Simon and Garfunkel? Junior Wells. Spoonful, released in 1960 by Howlin' Wolf, is originally based on A Spoonful Blues. By who? Charlie Patton, Frank Sinatra, or Perry Como? Charlie Patton. Who was the artist behind the 1931 hit that was re-released in 1964, Hard Time Killin' Floor Blues? Howlin' Wolf, Skip James, or Vera Lynn? Skip James. Who released the 1951 hit Dust My Broom, adapted from I Believe I'll Dust My Broom by Robert Johnson? Elmore James, Ferlin Husky, or Leon Payne? Elmore James. Who released the First Time I Met the Blues in 1968? Hank Williams, Jimmy Reed, or Buddy Guy? Buddy Guy. Who released the swamp blues classic I'm a King Bee in 1957? Bill Monroe, Slim Harpo, or the Diamonds? Slim Harpo. Who released the hit Big Boss Man in 1961? Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Hopkins, or Jimmy Reed? Jimmy Reed. And let's move over to disco. Who sang the seductive 1975 disco anthem, Love to Love You Baby? Bill Monroe, Donna Summer, or Hank Williams? Donna Summer. Who released the instantly recognizable sing-along hit YMCA in 1978? Empire of the Sun, People of the Sun, or The Village People? The Village People. Who released the empowering disco anthem I Will Survive in 1978? Bing Crosby, Gloria Gaynor, or Louis Jordan? Gloria Gaynor. Who released the smooth disco track Staying Alive in 1977? The Beach Boys, the Beatles, or the Bee Gees? The Bee Gees. Who released the 1979 feel-good disco anthem We Are Family, celebrating sisterhood and unity? Destiny's Child, Sister Sledge, or the Andrews Sisters? Sister Sledge. Who released the 1975 hit Get Down Tonight, a high-spirited disco song that encourages one to let loose and party? Artie Shaw, Casey and the Sunshine Band, or the Orioles? Casey and the Sunshine Band. No multiple choice here. What is the name of the Swedish quartet that released the globally beloved 1976 smash hit Dancing Queen? ABBA is the answer. Who released Le Freak in 1978, paying homage to Studio 54? ABBA, Chic, or Peggy Lee? Chic. Who released the feel-good disco funk hit September, celebrating the start of autumn? Earth, Wind and Fire, Fire and Ice, or The Elements? Earth, Wind and Fire. Question 70. Who released the infectious disco song Don't Stop Till You Get Enough in 1979? Jefferson Airplane, Michael Jackson, or Perry Como? Michael Jackson. Who released the exhilarating Disco Inferno in 1976, which was immortalized in Saturday Night Fever? Bing Crosby, Golden Gate Quartet, or The Tramps? The Tramps. Who sang Gotta Be Real, a 1978 disco hit known for its passionate vocals? ABBA, Cheryl Lynn, or Patsy Cline? Cheryl Lynn. Who released the triumphant disco track Can You Feel It in 1980? The Jacksons, Nat Burton, or Louis Jordan? The Jacksons. Who released the jubilant disco track Celebration in 1980? Kool and the Gang, Fresh and the Crew, or Love and the Sisters? Kool and the Gang. Who released the romantic disco ballad celebrating reconciliation, Reunited, in 1978? Artie Shaw, Golden Gate Quartet, or Peaches and Herb? Peaches and Herb. And let's move over to soul and R&B. Who is the artist behind the powerful civil rights anthem that reflects hope for change? A change is gonna come. Harry James, Peggy Lee, or Sam Cooke? Sam Cooke. What is the name of the artist behind the 1971 hit What's Going On? Margaret Whiting, Marvin Gaye, or Tommy Dorsey? Marvin Gaye. No multiple choice here. Who sang the iconic feminist anthem Respect, released in 1967? Aretha Franklin. Question 79. Who had his hit Sit on the Dock of the Bay posthumously released in 1968? Margaret Whiting, Otis Redding, or Perry Como? Otis Redding. Who released the magical funk-infused hit Superstition in 1972? Ricky Nelson, Stevie Wonder, or The Chords? Stevie Wonder. Who released the passionate soul ballad Let's Stay Together in 1971? Al Green, Etta James, or Nina Simone? Al Green. Who was the artist behind I Got You, I Feel Good, released in 1965? Elvis Presley, James Brown, or Stevie Wonder? James Brown. Who released the 1967 hit Your Love Keeps Lifting Me Higher and Higher? Etta James, Jackie Wilson, or Nina Simone? Jackie Wilson. Who released Midnight Train to Georgia in 1973? Jerry Lee Lewis, Gladys Knight and the Pips, or Shirley and Lee? Gladys Knight and the Pips. Which group released Where Did Our Love Go in 1964? The Supremes, the Suprettes, or the Supers? The Supremes. Question 86. Who released the harmony-rich Motown classic from 1964, My Girl? Jerry Lee Lewis, The Temptations, or the Isley Brothers? The Temptations. What is the name of the group that released Reach Out, I'll Be There in 1966? The Four Tops, the Isley Brothers, or the Monotones? The Four Tops. Who released The Passionate When a Man Loves a Woman in 1966? Dion DiMucci, Frank Sinatra, or Percy Sledge? Percy Sledge. Who released the Motown classic Shop Around in 1960? The Diamonds, the Miracles, or the Penguins? The Miracles. At question 90, who released the gritty R&B classic Mustang Sally in 1966? Cliff Richard, Ray Price, or Wilson Pickett? Wilson Pickett. And our mystery round for our last questions. What is the name of the 1962 song by Booker T and the MGs? Green Eggs and Ham, Green Onions, or Green Green Grass of Home? Green Onions. Who released the spiritual and socially aware anthem People Get Ready in 1965? Benny King, Merle Haggard, or The Impressions? The Impressions. Who released the playful and suggestive Do You Think I'm Sexy in 1978? Paul McCartney, Rod Stewart, or Stevie Wonder? Rod Stewart. Who released the vibrant disco track Knock on Wood in 1979? Amy Stewart, Michael Stewart, or Rod Stewart? Rod Stewart. Who released the irresistibly catchy Boogie Oogie Oogie in 1978? Boogie Oogie, A Taste of Boogie, or A Taste of Honey? A Taste of Honey. Play That Funky Music is a 1970s multi-genre hit performed by who? Alton Ellis, Simon and Garfunkel, or Wild Cherry? Wild Cherry. Who released Lucille in 1977? Johnny Cash, Kenny Rogers, or Ricky Martin? Kenny Rogers. Who was the 1957 song Peggy Sue named after? Buddy Holly's then girlfriend, Rod Stewart's wife, or Paul McCartney's high school teacher? Buddy Holly's then girlfriend. Who released the highly influential song Great Balls of Fire? Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, or Michael Jackson? Jerry Lee Lewis. And our last question. Who released My Generation in 1965? The Beatles, The Miracles, or The Who? The Who. Bonus question. Drawing from psychedelia and avant-garde movements, who was the group behind Strawberry Fields Forever, released in 1967? Let us know the answer in the comments, and of course, how you did with our Quiz Class Einstein rewards. As always, thanks for playing this quiz. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. See you next time.